Hey guys, I just want to go through my currently updated web page as of today, which is the 28th of February 2020. I wanted to do a quick update on the coronavirus research that I've been doing. I just put a lot of effort and information in here, and I know that some people don't have time to go through and read everything. So my goal is to just summarize a bit, provide a couple of links to different articles, websites, official, unofficial, alternative media, and then my own perspective on what's going on. Because I think that well, I feel guided to try to pass along a bit of perspective and try and hopefully keep people calm about what's going on. So some of the information I'm going to relay is disturbing. It's disturbing to me. I don't see why it wouldn't be disturbing to a lot of different people, because I just don't feel like we're being given accurate and honest information much of the time. I won't say all the time. I won't say most of the time, but there's a fair amount of times that we're not getting accurate information. The information that we're getting seems like it's more meant to divide us and put us at odds with each other, and put us at odds with other countries, and put us at odds. Just put us at odds. I mean, it's in my belief and opinion, spiritual in nature. So I'm just going to say that right out the gate. But what I want to focus on is just the information that is available, and the information that seems to be as legitimate as possible. But as my dad says, believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. So there's very little that we can really believe in this day and age, because so much of it is either wrong or meant to be manipulative or distracting, or partially true and then partially false. So it's really tough to get good information and reliable information. So I believe it's in our best interest to look at all of the information and try to figure out what, first of all, makes the most sense, and second, what we can do with it without causing more panic and negativity. Pointing out that people are either at one end of the spectrum with this coronavirus or the other. And by that I mean, one end of the spectrum is, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. What are we going to do? All these people are dying. People dropping dead in the streets. There's videos all over the place. And maybe that is actually happening. I very well could be. I mean, obviously there's videos out there, but we've seen plenty of videos that are faked. There's just a lot of videos on it. So I encourage people to take every video with a grain of salt. It is really easy to get worked up and anxious about watching a bunch of videos over and over again that depict people in white suits and right out of the movies, and people dropping dead and bleeding from their nose, and just like in movies. So is that real? Is it not? I don't know. I haven't had anybody that I know that has had that happen to them. So it's tough to be certain about any of that information without any sort of reliable backup. If you don't know somebody who's actually seen those things happen, then how can you really trust that to be absolutely true? On the other end of the spectrum is all the people who say that this is no worse than the common cold. It's no worse than influenza. As a matter of fact, influenza kills hundreds of thousands of people every year, and millions of people get influenza, and influenza is way worse than this could ever be, and we should be worrying about that, or we should be worrying about all these other things. That's the other end of the spectrum. Far end. Dismissing this coronavirus out of hand because it's supposedly not as bad as the flu is also dangerous because we don't know enough about it. Let me just break it down, okay? So I want to just click on this to show that influenza is not as bad as the CDC would have you believe necessarily. The CDC throws out numbers in the millions of infected people every year and in the hundreds of thousands of deaths. Those are estimates. The CDC estimates that those are the numbers. The World Health Organization has laboratory surveillance information that says that this year, peak season at the end of January, globally, 45 to 50,000 people reportedly were tested positive for the multiple different types of influenza. Not hundreds of thousands, not millions. 40 to 50,000 people tested positive. Where they get their estimates from, I don't know. I've gone to the CDC website. I've gone through all their numbers. Their numbers, the official, actual numbers, are not in the millions. If we are going to compare apples to apples, you have to compare the specimens that they're testing positive to the coronaviruses specimens that are testing positive. Okay? So if you add up the last 2 months, 3 months of influenza, all positively tested influenza patients, to all of the positively tested coronavirus cases, you're still going to have many more cases of influenza. So that is legitimate. But it's not in the millions. It's not in the hundreds of thousands of deaths. That is speculative at best. So to say that hundreds of thousands of people have died from influenza is no different than saying that hundreds of thousands of people have died from coronavirus, when officially the cases of deaths are under 3,000 thus far. So can it kill people? Absolutely. Can it kill as many people as influenza? We don't know yet. It hasn't been around that long. We have vaccines for influenza. They're not necessarily effective, but we have vaccines for it. Do we have an effective vaccine for any vaccine for coronavirus? No, we don't have any vaccine. We currently have no way of curing it. We have no way of effectively treating it to prevent death. People are still dying even with treatment. Now the argument can be, well, it is being treated. Most of these deaths occurred in China, where they don't have great health care. Sure, make that argument. But there are plenty of cases in other countries now that still are resulting in death. And the percentage of deaths, throwing out there 2% mortality rate, is also irresponsible. It is not 2%. If you go by the number of confirmed cases to the amount of deaths, it's still over 3.4%. That's as of recently. Well, as of in the last couple of days. If you actually compare it to the people who have gotten it, to the people who have died and recovered, or the people who have gotten it and recovered, to the people who have died from it, you're upwards of 7%. And that's, again, globally. And understand that takes into consideration that 45,000 people still have it. So have been diagnosed, tested for it, tested positive for it, and 45,000 people are still probably in the hospital and probably in quarantine. And again, we're looking at serious or critical condition. Here's another 7,000 to 8,000 people who may, if not will likely, die from this. So you can tack that on potentially to the number of total deaths. But we're going to kind of step past that for a minute just to break it down, because we're looking at global numbers. Let's go down to actual numbers in more westernized countries. These countries are supposed to have relatively good health care. They're still looking at, again, compared to people who have gotten it and recovered to the people who have died in that particular country, we have anywhere between 15 and 35% mortality rate. That's a little disturbing. There's a lot of people in these countries who have gotten it and are still sick. They have not recovered yet. I don't know the time frame on these people. The time frame on the time from the time you get infected to the time you're actually symptomatic, it varies significantly. And the time that you get it to the time you actually test positive also varies significantly. Up to 27 days, I read at one point. 3 days. 3 days is the bare minimum of the incubation period. And up to 24 or 27 days, depending on what you read. There was actually a study done, which I link to on my site here, that they can have it for 24 days before getting symptomatic. And it's I don't know if it's documented, it's at least assumed that they can pass it around to other people while they're not having symptoms. Again, they don't know if it's airborne. We do know that it's droplet. So it can be passed through sputum, through spit, through sneezing, through kissing, through bodily fluids. That's how it's being passed for certain. So you can have somebody that has it not have any symptoms, but yet have it in their saliva and pass it on to somebody else by a kiss. Moving on. We're being told different things about how many cases there are, but what they aren't talking about is how many people are actually tested in the United States. As of the 26th of February. Oh, they must have just updated that to the 28th. So, as of the 28th of February, there is only 459 people that have been tested in the United States for it. That seems like a very low number of tests when we still are having people flying back from South Korea, where we know there to be over 2,300 cases. Why are there only 400 to 500 tests done? That doesn't make any sense to me. We have all these other situations that show that we should be testing much more for this. So I have questions about the information that we're getting. I have links to other news that Japan is closing schools nationwide. Italy is closing schools and businesses in some areas. officially, Switzerland is banning large-scale events of 1,000 people or more until the 15th at least. So if that's the case, and this is just a flu virus, or like a flu virus, why are those countries making these, taking these actions? Once again, less than 500 people tested in the United States. That is concerning to me. I'm just going to try and cut this short because I have the information here if you want to come and see it. Try and stay healthy. Try and stay clean. Keep your immune system strong. Eat and drink healthy. Get enough rest. Prepare for the possibility that some of the things that are happening in these other countries, Western countries, could happen here. Continue to watch and read information about what's going on, and discern the absolute garbage information and fear-mongering information, because it's only going to cause anxiety and panic, and we don't need that. You need quality information that is talking about what is happening, hopefully legitimately happening, not just people throwing crap out there that is not necessarily true. When you hear reports of 6,000 plus people being observed in California, that's concerning. It's something to watch. Is it legitimate? I don't know. But if you know people in California, see if it's true. I'd love to know if that's actually true. Because if they're watching 6,000 plus people in California for coronavirus, but they're not testing them, why is that happening? I don't know why they're not testing more people. Last I read, there's only 3 states in the entire United States that actually have the capacity to test for this. And also that the tests are not necessarily accurate for a number of different reasons. We don't know. We don't know if they're accurate because of operator malfunction or error, or they're not accurate because the test itself is flawed. Who knows? What we know is that we don't know how many people have this virus in the United States. We don't know how serious it is. We can probably safely assume that it is going to affect people with pre-existing conditions, especially pulmonary or lung conditions, more than it's going to affect healthy people. But that doesn't mean that healthy people can't get really sick from it. That does not mean that healthy people cannot die from it. We can assume that this is going to probably spread. We cannot assume that when the weather warms up, it's going to go away. Keep informed with good information. Make a plan. Make plans. Talk to your family. Talk to your friends. What will happen when they start closing schools, if they start closing schools? Do you have a process in place so that you can go to work? If you want to go to work, are you going to go to work? Can you not go to work? Can you telecommute? All of those things are good conversations to have versus just pretending like it's not happening. Pretending like it's all a bunch of hooey meant to distract people from, what the government is doing, what the government's not doing, whatever side you're on. Stop politicizing it. This is more than politics. It could be serious. It's obviously serious in other countries. There's no reason to think that it could not be serious here. We are actually blessed to have this time to talk about it and prepare for the possibility. I'm not saying run out and buy cases of water or toilet paper unless you really feel the need to do that. I don't think that that's the action that you should take. It's good to have some Perhaps some extra food. Buy a bunch of canned food that you like. If you like a certain type of soup, buy a bunch of it. If you like a certain type of green beans or corn, buy a bunch of it. It'll hold. You'll use it up over the next year or two before it spoils. Do you need to go out and buy all kinds of preps for the apocalypse? I don't think so. But it doesn't hurt to have more food than you normally have. If you're somebody that goes week to week or day to day, it might behoove you to have a little more than that. Maybe a couple weeks worth, maybe a couple of months worth if you can afford it. That's just a good idea in general. If you don't have to go out in public any more than you need to, don't. If you don't have to expose yourself any more than you need to, don't. Stay healthy. Talk to people close to you about it. Have the conversations, because the more you have the conversation, hopefully, the less anxiety and the less panic it will produce. Maybe other people are thinking the same thing, but they're afraid to talk about it because they're afraid that they're going to be seen as crazy. It's not crazy to talk about something that is real. This is really happening in multiple countries in other parts of the world. There is no reason to think that things like this can't happen here. It happened in 2009 with influenza, H1N1. It became a pandemic. Read up on it. A lot of people may not have gotten as sick or died potentially if they had been more prepared. Yes, influenza kills a lot of people every year. But guess what? The H1N1 influenza that occurred back in 2009, the pandemic that went around the whole entire globe, that is now a seasonal flu. Read on it. This could become seasonal. We don't know. We don't know enough about this to determine whether or not it is serious enough to really quarantine ourselves for. They're doing it in other countries. I don't know that we have to go down that road yet, but it sure is good to know as much as you can, so that if it does come to that, either suggested or forced, that you have some sort of plan in place, or at least have talked about it to some degree. We have gotten desensitized to these outbreaks because the movies talk about it and the governments talk about it, and now we're at a point where we think that the government just wants to panic us and cause problems with elections and this and that and other things that are so illegitimate and so not the point, that we want to throw our hands up in the air and go, oh, it's nothing. Or, oh my God, this is the end of the world. It's not one or the other. It's in between. Stop fighting against your own people and come together to try to figure out solutions, whether that solution is just being prepared and being smart about it, or it's figuring out a quarantine system, figuring out how you're going to come and go. I don't know if it's going to come to that. I sure hope it doesn't come to that. But talking about what's going to happen if what would happen if your kid's schools close and you have to find daycare because you still go to work because you're not going to be able to work from home. That's a valid conversation to have. There's nothing wrong with that. And above all else, find your spiritual center. I'm not going to tell you what to believe, but I believe that my relationship with my Creator is more important than anything else. And I know from my own personal experience that having a strong faith that my Creator will provide and will be with me during the course of any and every crisis. This is just the latest one. And for so many people around the world, they're all struggling with different types of tribulations and challenges and events that this is just one of many. There's people in the United Kingdom who are dealing with flooding. There's people in Africa and all across the Middle East that are dealing with locusts. They're dealing with all kinds of other tribulations. This is just something that we're being informed of because we still have the internet, because we still have all this information. Is it going to spread? I don't know. I don't see how it is not going to spread. We're given an opportunity to prepare ourselves, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically and spiritually for the potential that this could be something significant. I'm in healthcare, so I'm watching this stuff close for my own well-being, for my family's well-being, for my wife's well-being, who is also in healthcare, for people around me who I know that are in healthcare, because this is not tapering off. Could it taper off come spring? Sure, it could. Should we assume that? I don't think so. I don't think that's a good idea to just blow it off and assume it's all going to be okay. I mean, of course it's going to be okay, and my faith says that things are going to be just fine. But okay in what regard? So just dismissing it out of hand, I believe that can be dangerous, because if it comes to the point where it's something that you have to deal with for a number of different reasons, whether it be economical or related to social situations like your kid's school, or physical. You know somebody who gets it, or maybe you get it yourself. Hopefully you're in good enough health and you'll recover. A lot of people are recovering from it. It's not a life and death situation, but things like this occur, and it does affect daily life. It can affect daily life. So talk about it. Don't just ignore it. Don't go one end of the spectrum or the other. Just try to be positive and talk to people about it responsibly and morally and maturely, because getting all upset or getting all political or getting all anything doesn't help. So hang in there, stay informed, stay positive, and may God bless and be with you.